We finally got a look at Liberty Falls' new makeover, and it's looking pretty the same. Yeah, it's kind of underwhelming. It's got like an overcast sky now, which I do like better, but it just doesn't really feel all that different, to be honest. So before I talk more shit about Liberty Falls than a high school girl whose best friend is out sick for the day, I do think there's some praising in order here. The fact that they made any sort of change to this map in the first place after the feedback, that's a pretty huge W. Having such a great example of them listening to feedback before the game is even goddamn out, that's increased my confidence in them astronomically. Because even if Liberty Falls ends up being mid-Bertie balls, that still instills confidence that they'll keep our grievances with the map's atmosphere in mind, and hopefully they'll avoid making the same mistake in future maps. I also think it's important to note that we haven't heard any of the audio changes they made yet, or really even the audio in the first place. If you ask me, the audio in Zombies has played like a huge role in making the atmosphere of maps. Looking back to Kino, it had this like really creepy atmosphere. I think a lot of that had to do with the zombies, the damned theme just playing silently in the background. It really enhanced the creepiness factor. I think Verrückt's another good example where like it had just these super creepy noises in the background that like occasionally played. Audio is absolutely super important for making the mood of a zombie map, and for Liberty Falls, we can't really judge that until we, hear it, see it, whatever for ourselves. So that's kind of something to keep in mind. But with all that out of the way, for going solely based on just the images they showed in the blog post, it definitely leaves more to be desired. And quite honestly, I don't think any amount of skybox changes or ambient noises is going to change the real problem with this map, which is that its setting is just not all that interesting. It's just a frickin' town. I've seen a goddamn town before. I live in one. It's not a location to really get excited about. Not only that, but we've seen towns and zombies before, so it's like extra less interesting. Even the towns we've seen before have been a lot more interesting. Even Forsaken, the literal last round-based map, Vanguard notwithstanding, it had a town, but it was cool because it was like a fake town, and that's still a lot more interesting than just the town we're getting in Liberty Falls. Then of course there's also Transit. Gotta mention Transit. It's just a town, yet it's immensely more cooler than Liberty Falls just because it has like this fiery apocalyptic setting. If Transit was just like it had the same atmosphere as Liberty Falls, it would be just as boring. They at least had some kind of creativity with Transit by adding all the lava and the fog. You see that with a lot of older zombie maps where they're really good at dressing them up with cool themes in order to make them more interesting. For Black Ops 3, pretty much every map is just like a 935 facility, but they put like a cool atmosphere behind it. Zetsubo has like an overgrown plant thing going on, which makes it more interesting than just a facility. Gorod Krovi is a facility, but it's also during a war zone with like dragons and shit. That's goddamn awesome. Liberty Falls doesn't have anything like that. It's just a town. I just really wish they did something like that to make it more interesting. Having it be in a town is okay, but they had to have some kind of theme behind it to make it more interesting. West Virginia has so much awesome folklore that'd just be super awesome for a zombie map, and they went with the actual least interesting option possible of just a frickin' town. When Cold War started teasing the West Virginia setting, my initial thoughts were that they were gonna do something based on Greenbrier or something, and every time I see new Liberty Falls news or screenshots, whatever, I just can't help but think how much cooler it would have been if they went with something. The Greenbrier is such an iconic location. That would have been such a better setting for a West Virginia map. But even if they were set on just a town setting, they could have made it a million times more interesting than what they actually came up with. They could have done like one of those preserved colonial American towns where like it's basically just straight out of the 1700s. You know, all the architecture is like 1700s, and then dressed it up with American flags and such, almost as if like there was just a 4th of July parade or something. They could have had the goddamn Mothman as a mini boss, but instead they just reused enemies from older maps. I just think they really wasted the potential of a West Virginia map. I mean, I do appreciate them trying to make the map moodier, but I don't think that was necessarily the problem with it. It was just that the map lacked any sort of artistic uniqueness. That just stems from them choosing a really uninteresting location for the map. I know a lot of people speculate that there's gonna be some sort of underground area that'll be accessible during the Easter egg, but even if that ends up being true, I don't think it'll solve the problem. I don't think it would amount to much other than just boss arena, and even then, in order to experience it, you would have to do the Easter egg, so it's not like something you'd be seeing in every single match. So I don't think that really improves the map's general aesthetic, because the basic map that the majority of people are going to be playing, you know, most people would only really do the Easter egg once and that's it. So it's not something they would ever really experience. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Liberty Falls problems run deeper than just having a bad atmosphere. I do think it's incredible that they're not just listening to our feedback, but actually making changes based on them. I cannot stress enough how awesome that is. I'm just not really hopeful that it's gonna drastically change the perception of the map. I just think the general concept of just a town, just an American town with no sort of set dressing or anything, is just not a very interesting one. I think the best we can hope for is that the gripes with it are something they take into future maps and be like, yeah, we gotta do some sort of creative artistic, you know, they gotta use their artistic license, so to speak, for future maps. And I hope that's the effect this map is gonna have for the rest of Black Ops 6 Zombies. That's all I got. Yeah. I don't have an outro though.